I've been building PCs since I was like an early teenager. I used to take apart PCs and just put them back together and stuff when I was younger, and then I've just been building PCs all my life, really, for friends and family and stuff like that. And I just enjoy doing it, but it's not something I do as like a career, you know. It's just something I do for fun. It's therapeutic for me. Building PCs, installing car stereo systems, stuff like that, it's all kind of the same thing. It's just like it's something where I can like focus, and I've got kind of an OCD thing where it's like I take my time. I like to do it right. Installing car stereos, I make sure everything's done correctly, wires are hidden, stuff like that. But I've been doing it since I was, you know, an early teenager. I just enjoy doing it. It's something that I find therapeutic almost just to do. I just enjoy it. I don't know. There's just something about it. But with this, I've been running the PC I have now since early 2021 when I first started streaming, and I built it then, which is that's what this PC is, and I'm building a new one. And so this is my case. That's the case that I'll be running. It's about as big of a mid tower that you can get without it before you hit full tower. It's a fairly expensive case, but it's big, and it's one of the best rated cases for air cooling on the market. So if you look inside of it, it actually comes with really good fans in it already as well. So it's got two 180 millimeter fans on the front, and then it's got three 140 millimeter fans on the bottom, and it's all intake. And apparently, from all my research, you don't even need to put exhaust fans on this thing. So it's already got positive air pressure in it with the fans that are built into it. So again, it's got filters on the front, it's got filters on the bottom. This case is really, really easy for like the panels are not screws or anything, dude. It's just the top panel here has two screws on the back, and then these are just clip-ins, dude. You have to take the top panel off, but then these side panels just kind of pop off. It's so nice, dude. And so the airflow is already really good in the case, where apparently people that I've already have the case, I've done a bunch of research. Putting an exhaust fan literally does nothing for the case at all. You just run it with what it's already got in it, and it's one of the best air cooling cases on the market. So figured I'd give it a shot, and this is what we're going to run for the build. So I went with white because I wasn't planning on doing another white build because my current build is white, and I was going to do a black one, but I ended up getting a white motherboard and a white GPU. So here we are. We'll go back to the just cam and I'll show you the parts. So first of all, we've got the 9800X3D. So that's our processor. So 32 CAS latency, Corsair Vengeance, cool. So pretty good CAS latency. Here's the motherboard, still legend. Now for anybody that's gonna go, oh dude, asrock's been having issues. I know, but apparently it's been fixed. I've looked into it. So people have been talking about there have been some issues. BIOS update fix, yeah. There's something weird that happened between ASRock and AMD. There were people saying on a subreddit that so from everything I've seen, you know, every single chip that comes out, every generation of chip, it doesn't matter if it's Intel, it doesn't matter if it's AMD, every generation of motherboard that comes out, manufacturers vary in their products, and you kind of have to do your research on what chipset, what generation, what motherboard manufacturer is the best one to go with and stuff, you know. So ASRock, from all my research, is one of the best ones for the AM5 right now, especially, you know, across the board with the different models. And the Still Legend's one of the highest rated. So that's what I decided to go with. I know they've had issues recently, but apparently it's been cleaned up. There were people saying that ASRock's boards were like bricking the X3D chips, but ASRock did a BIOS update to ensure that it wasn't anything on their side. AMD was saying that there wasn't anything on their side, and there wasn't a ton of people that were having issues. It was just a few, really, it seemed like. So I don't know. But, you know, I waited until it sounded like everything was cleaned up before I went ahead and bought everything and got ready to build this. So I feel fairly comfortable now that everything's going to be okay with all the BIOS fixes and everything. And we'll be able to flash this thing before we get started. It's got easy flash, so I'll be able to flash this and get the current BIOS update. We also got to stay with thematic, right? Branding. We got the ASRock Still Legend 9070 XT. I just feel like NVIDIA is getting a little bit overpriced. Let's be fair. All graphics cards of the current generation that just released are overpriced. If you can find one fairly close to MSRP, congratulations, right? The fact that if you go look at, like, I think what AMD is doing with the 9070 XTs right now, what NVIDIA is doing with their 50, you know, their 50 series cards, I wanted to try the AMD cards out, you know. For the price point of the XTs, I wanted to try it out, you know. NVIDIA feels like the evolution of their technology is not growing enough for how much their price point is growing, in my opinion. And AMD has always felt more like they're trying to give us consumers a competitive piece of hardware at a competitive price, right? I mean, look at what AMD has always been for CPUs, and now look where they're at, right, in comparison to Intel. And I feel like they're kind of getting up there finally in the GPU market too. So I wanted to give this a try, you know. So staying thematic, I went with an ASRock PSU. So, if you didn't know, ASRock just started making PSUs not too long ago, probably about a year ago. I didn't know it either until I started buying new components for the new PC build. But they are reviewing very, very, very well. And you can see down here, it's got this one 80 plus gold, cybernetics platinum, cybernetics 8 plus. It's got a 10-year warranty on it. It's ATX 3.1 compatible. It's fully modular, PCIe 5.1 ready. It's white, which I needed, right? So, dude, I didn't know they made them either, but they're rating very, very well, and they're very respectable price points. So after I found it online on my on one of the retailers, I was really interested, and I went and started doing a bunch of research and looked at reviews from people that were running them, and people have been really impressed. And professional review sites and stuff have been really impressed too. So I was like, you know what? I'm already running Still Legend on two other components, major components. So why not go ahead and run a Still Legend power supply and try it out too? I actually haven't run any ASRock stuff since way back in the fatality days of ASRock stuff. So this is going to be the first time I've run ASRock in quite some time, which is exciting. I haven't run ASRock in quite some time, and so this is going to be a major ASRock build, which is really neat. I haven't done ASRock for quite a while. If you didn't know they made these, this is just a little secure frame for the AM5 chips. It basically just houses around the AM5 chip. This is from Thermalright. These things only cost about 10 to 15 bucks. You can get them all over the place. But these are basically, because you see how weird the AM5 chips are designed. You see that cutout? That's what the AM5 chips look like. They're just a different shape than most CPUs, right? Yeah, it's a contact frame, exactly. So what it does is it basically gives you a much larger contact area and makes it one big rectangular surface area, right? So you don't have to run these. It's not necessary. It's just something that people like me will do for peace of mind. But for how cheap they are, because that's just a big chunky metal piece to put on your motherboard, it will help secure your heatsink down. It'll help prevent warping of the motherboard, you know, and the chip and stuff like that. I recommend it. It just makes sense. It's so cheap, and it just makes sense to do it, right? So, in my opinion, you run something like that. I'm a Noctua fan. I've got a big old NHD, what is it, the D15, right, on my current PC. But you pay a premium for those things, you know? You're talking $130 to $150, and they're bad boys. Woo! That's absolutely right. You nailed it. Peerless Assassin. So, I did a bunch of research, and Thermalright is making some killer heat sinks. And I'm talking about saving about $80 to $90 probably. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with paying a premium, right, for quality products. But man, when you're talking about saving $80 to $100 that you can put towards a better CPU or a better GPU for your build or whatever, it's hard to argue with that. And this apparently is getting people, as long as you're not overclocking, okay? As long as you're not overclocking your chip, these, as well as the Phantom Spirits from Thermalright, are getting people on par thermals on AM5 chips as what the best Noctuas are. And you can't argue with that, man. You just can't argue with it. And that's where I was doing my research here recently, and I couldn't believe it, actually. And I was like, well, looks like that's where we're going. So I got the RGB version, because the more LEDs you have, I think that's the more FPS you get while you're playing, right? I think that's the way that works. Everybody back me up on that one. So this is what it'll look like inside the case to stay thematic. Yeah, of course, right. Really, the only other things I think that we'll be hooking up with this, I've got things like this. This will be our main hard drive. That's a 2 terabyte 990 Pro, right? So nice little M.2 Samsung drive. This will be my thermal paste that I'll be using. I actually already had this around because I took apart my GPU. My 3070 is a Gigabyte 3070 in my current rig. I started having heat issues with it about, 9 months ago. So I took it apart and I redid my thermal paste, and I redid all my thermal padding inside my GPU. And I just went ahead and redid my thermal paste on my CPU in this rig too. And this stuff, awesome. So I already had it. We'll just reuse it. I've still got some in there, so we'll do that. The other things that I'm going to be putting in here is just aesthetic stuff. These are TechWares. They got really good reviews. Never heard of the company, but they got good reviews, and they're a fraction of the price of some of the other brands. And they look like they're very good quality. I already opened them up. They're basically just LED cables that run over your power cable that goes to your motherboard for right here. It's going to be your 24 pin. And then they've also got another one that will run over your power cables that go to your GPU. So basically, they just have these clips that clip onto the bottom side of these LED cables, and then the power cables clip onto the back side of those clips, and it makes these look like these are the power cables, but they're really just LED lights. And it's just aesthetics, but they're fun. And they're ARGB, so it'll be the same lighting scheme as all the other ARGB stuff in the case. This is our ARGB fan hub that I bought. This is also a brand I'm not familiar with, but it got really good reviews on Amazon. And it's got a magnetic back, so I don't have to worry about sticking it in the case with like 3M tape or something like that, you know. It's got a magnetic back, and it'll allow me to basically plug anything into it I need to be controlled with PWM for the fans, or something that needs to be controlled for ARGB, or both. And it's very inexpensive, and it looks dope. Not that we'll probably see it because it'll be on the back side of the case, but, and this is going to be our other GPU support stand. It's actually really, really nice. This thing has a thermometer on it, so it'll monitor the inside temperature of the case. It will, it's very, very well built. It's very sturdy. It's got a ARGB kind of display on it, as well as an infinity mirror, so it's kind of cool looking. So I got all that stuff in too. We're going to be using a different microphone, okay? I've been using a Blue Yeti, which is a solid USB microphone, right? But now this is not necessarily a super high-end XLR microphone, but we are going to switch over and use an XLR microphone. Now the difference being, to use an XLR microphone, it doesn't plug directly into USB. So this specific microphone can. It can plug directly into USB, but I am going to use a bit of a different, more elaborate setup, as I'm going to use XLR and this as well, which is an audio mixer. Okay, so it allows me to have a little bit better control of the audio, especially because it has better inputs closer to me for things like headphones, things of that nature, auxiliary inputs. You can see on the back of it there, right? So as well as right here, this is going to be the input for the microphone now. So this type of microphone is supposed to be a little bit better quality as far as using something outside of a USB. Now, of course, this will still plug. This is what basically converts the audio signal from the XLR signal coming out of the microphone into the USB signal and puts it into the PC. So we're running this setup now instead of just a straight up USB microphone straight into the PC. So hopefully this will make our audio for the mic a little bit cleaner, less issues with potential background noise, a little crisper, things like that, okay? Again, this is not the best possible situation for building a PC. You guys can see me, right? Normally, you know, if you're going to stream something like this especially, you would have a bigger bench testing setup. You would have a bigger table, but this is my stream setup. I'm not usually doing this kind of thing, so it's not my normal situation, but I wanted to do this for everybody if I could make it work, and I think we'll be okay here. Again, this is going to be your anti-static wrist strap. I do not have a great place to actually clip it to. Usually what you want to do is you want to make sure you're grounded. They make mats that do the same thing that you can stand on, but You just want to clip this somewhere that will help offload static that you might generate to your body, because you don't want to accidentally discharge static electricity while you're working on any kind of sensitive electronic components and potentially damage them. It won't necessarily always brick them, but it can damage them to the point of them maybe not working as efficiently as they did before. But it can, depending on where the static electricity hits, what components get damaged, things like that, it can potentially alter their functionality, even to the point of completely, entirely damaging them to where they're inoperable, right? So, what we'll do is just kind of start off here with getting the motherboard out, and we need to get some stuff ready on there. So I'll work my way through. I'll explain everything to the best of my ability, but I've never done an AM5 build before. I've done a lot of PC builds, but I haven't done an AM5. This will be my first AM5. But basically, PC building is like riding a bike, okay? And I'll do my very best to explain things. If you need further explanation about anything, or you have questions that maybe I didn't cover, feel free to ask, and I'll do my very best to explain everything to the best of my ability, okay? Let me start with this. Get yourself a good set of tools. This one is old, and there's kind of crap all over the place. So, yeah, it looks kind of janky. It's because this is my old PC tool set, but I still use it because it is very serviceable. So, get yourself a nice PC building tool set. This is just not necessarily for PC, but electronics in general. It has an electronic screw set, or an electronic screw memory mat, right? So anytime I need to put anything metal on here that is small, it will stay on this, right? So we'll do that. We've got 2 different extending screwdrivers here. Things of this nature come in very handy. You don't need a real expensive tool set, okay? Just something very serviceable, very handy. A lot of different bit sizes and shapes. You've got different kinds of tools for popping open electronics, plastic, especially plastic tools for popping open electronics are very nice, so you're not damaging the molding, okay? I can't tell you how many times I've had to pop open electronics using things like even these plastic picks right here come in very handy. So just a nice little tool set like this is something that is nice to have around, okay? So, some of the first stuff we will be using, obviously, our motherboard. Let me turn that around for you. That's our ASRock X870 Still Legend. This is an AM5 platform motherboard because we are running 9800 X3D right there. That'll be going in. So that's the processor that will go in here. But one of the first things we'll be doing is actually taking this piece off of here. If you need to know what your BIOS is on your motherboard from the factory, you can usually find it on a sticker that will be placed right between your RAM, where your RAM slots are, and your CPU socket. So right between here and right between these RAM slots, there will be a sticker, okay? And the last 3 digits usually of that sticker will tell you what the BIOS number is, what the BIOS version is. And that should tell you whether or not your BIOS version is where you need it to be, or whether or not you're going to need to flash your motherboard. I'm going to need to update my motherboard, which is fine. I do it almost every time I build a PC. I need to flash or update the motherboard before I actually boot it up. It's not a big deal. It's not hard to do. We can talk about that after we build the PC. I can run you through the process. A lot of modern motherboards make it very, very simple with a USB flash port, where you basically just have to have power running to the PC. You don't even have to have the PC on, and it will, as long as you've set up the files on the USB drive correctly, it will update the BIOS on your motherboard without you even having to turn on the PC, right? So I'll run you through the steps after I've built the PC and all of that stuff, because it'll be easier for me to show you. If you're building a new PC, there's always the potential that you might have gotten a bad product. You always hope not, and I've had pretty good luck with the stuff I've bought, right? But there's always the potential you might need to send something back, right? So especially as you're taking things out of the box, don't just go ripping stuff apart, because if you need to send something back, you're going to need to put it back in that box. So be cool. This is from Thermalright, and it is an AM5 secure frame, okay? That's what this is. And so one of the first things we're going to do to this motherboard is replace basically this. I'll pull this out real quick and I'll show you. The secure frame is something that gives you more of a surface area, a flat surface area for contact area as well for the AM5 chip. The AM5 chip is a kind of a weird design. It almost looks like a puzzle piece. It might be hard to see. I don't know if I'll get it to focus right there. But this is the sticker between your RAM slots and your CPU that will tell you the last 3 digits of what your motherboard BIOS is out of the box, okay? And if you're not familiar with the term BIOS, it's what you need to know is that your motherboard BIOS is the software that controls the functionality of what your motherboard does. That's basically exactly what you need to know, okay? That's all it is. And if it's not functioning correctly, it can hinder what your computer does. It can damage things, what have you. So it's important to keep your BIOS up to date, all right? So this is a lever that basically keeps this top plate locked down, okay? So whenever you're ready to put your CPU in, you unhook it from a little bitty flap here. This lever comes up, pull it back like that, and then this will loosen up. There we go. So real gentle pop open. Just gonna wipe my hands down real quick, because the other thing with your CPU is this. As you're handling it, now it's not a big deal, because what I'll tell you is that the best thing you should do before you put your heatsink on your processor is that you should re-clean the top of it after handling it, okay? But to be very careful, do the best you can to not get a bunch of oily fingerprints all over the top of it too, because the less oil and things like that from your hands that are on top of it that you potentially don't get off with cleaning, the better that your thermal paste is going to adhere and do its job, all right? So to the best of your ability, grab it like this. Don't grab it all over the top of the lid. This is like what you would refer to as the lid of the chip. Grab it from the side of the board here, in my opinion anyways. You're gonna lift this up. Again, we're matching up our corner diamond or corner triangle with corner triangle where it tells you it goes. And it should just fall right into place. Okay? So you don't need to put pressure on this. You just drop it in there. And it should just fall into place, guys. So if it doesn't look like it's probably sitting where it needs to go, there might be something wrong. Pull it up, take a look. But, you know, it should be a fairly simple case of just dropping that bad boy in there, all right? Okay, so see, it just popped that off. And that's basically what it does, is it just locks your CPU in place. So just like before, right? That's how that works. But we are not necessarily going to be using this. Okay, we're going to be locking our CPU down with a different device. So with this guy, right? So basically this entire metal piece right here that locks down the processor is going to come off, and this is going to surround it instead. Again, the board comes with an absolutely appropriate piece of equipment, piece of hardware to lock the CPU down and do exactly what you need it to do. So this step that I'm doing here is not necessary, but this is what I'll tell you. As you can see, probably if I get this a little bit closer, the Ryzen 5 CPUs are cut like a puzzle piece, okay? They're a little bit different. And in between these cutouts, if you put too much thermal paste on, it won't necessarily affect anything. If you put too much thermal paste on top of your CPU and you put your heatsink down on top of here and it leaks down into that, it's not going to be fun having to clean that thermal paste off. So what you'll see is as I take off this and put this on, it's going to give us one big flat surface that covers those up. So this thing was like $10 to $15. Is it necessary? No, it absolutely is not. But if you're going to build a PC anyways, an AM5 platform PC, and you're already going through this process, in my opinion, this is worth, okay? It gives you a bigger, flatter surface area for your heatsink to kind of sit on, and your heatsink should only be really sitting on the chip anyways, but, you know, it gives you a bigger, flatter surface area, and in case you accidentally use too much thermal paste, it'll spread out onto this rather than going down into these notches of the chip. That's going to make it really hard to clean out if in the future you need to reapply your thermal paste, okay? This thermalright plate came with thermal paste, which I won't be using, but it does come with thermal paste, which is supposed to be decent if you want to use it. It comes with the tool that you need. Screws, they gave you everything you need, okay? Alrighty. Now, there should be a back plate on here too, and it does look like, just from looking through the screw holes here, there is a back plate. It should not move if you've got your motherboard down flat, okay? So the back plate is a support plate for basically your motherboard, your CPU, the fact that you could potentially be having a lot of weight put on it with a heat sink, which we will have an amount of weight with our heat sink being put on here. But just know there is something on the back side of this that you're screwing into, and it needs to remain there, okay? But as long as you have your motherboard down flat and you're not moving your motherboard around, when you take this off, it will stay there until you put this other thermalright plate on, okay? But just be aware of that fact. Grab our board. So as you can see, our processor is still in place. Now, boom. Perfect. Now the secure frame has been fit on top of it. We can just slot our screws down. So aesthetically, not only does it look much better, but again, you should be able to see the difference now, right? Instead of having all these gaps around this CPU that look, you know, again, looks like a puzzle piece and could potentially let thermal paste leak down in there, whatever. It's more of a big, nice, flat surface, right? And if you're not familiar with the trick of the trade of how to tighten down something of this nature, it doesn't matter if it's a wheel on a car, if it's a secure plate around a CPU, you cross pattern. This is the way you should do this, okay? You go across, just get it hand tight. It doesn't need to be cranked down, just get it hand tight. Then go to the next one. Hand tight, and then across. Crisscross it. So then what you'll do, and again, like, I mean, we're talking about a motherboard, okay? So this is not something that needs to be torqued down heavy, okay? You don't want to damage this. It's very delicate. It's got a lot of circuits running through it, all kinds of different chips and transistors and capacitors and you name it, right? So these circuits running through this board, now motherboards are, you know, built better than they used to be, but you still don't necessarily want to be cranking down on this while you're tightening things up either. You do want to make sure things are tight, but you don't need to go crazy with it, okay? But anytime you tighten something, go back over it. Make sure that in the same exact pattern, make sure it's tightened. There we go. So then basically what I would say is you're going to want to take this, which is the old secure plate for the CPU off of your motherboard and put that into your motherboard box, okay? That way, if you ever need it, and again, you can see the black plate that I popped off before, it just snaps right back on there. Put it back in your box, motherboard box, that way you know where it is if you ever need it, all right? We got the Corsair Vengeance RGB. We got 64 gigs of that. To be fair, I mean, could we have gone with more? Yeah, but is it necessary? I don't really feel like it. Unless you're doing certain applications, I don't feel like you really need anything more than 64 gigs right now. I mean, I've been streaming the past 4 years on a PC that only had 32. So, and I mean, gaming high-end games while streaming at the same time, running numerous applications for streaming, you name it. And everything's been absolutely fine as far as how much RAM I needed. So, obviously, RAM requirements for a lot of games are getting more intense. I think that if you're building a decently higher mid-range to high-end PC right now, it makes more sense to go ahead and put 64 gigs of RAM in it at this point. But at the same time, you can still go 32 gigs of RAM and do it in a 2-stick setup like I'll be doing, you know, and then put another 32 gigs in later and get yourself to 64. For me, I'll do 64 now, and with 2 sticks, if I need to do 64 later, I can do that and double up. But, I mean, dude, the potential of that needing to happen, I think, are very slim. So, but I got 32 CAS latency, Corsair, Vengeance, DDR5. So that's what we'll be running with. It's the white sticks to match the aesthetic that we're going with here, okay? RAM is super easy. There you go. That's what it looks like. RAM's real easy because of that little notch. See that little notch? There it is. See that little notch right there? There's a little notch at the bottom of your RAM stick, and it's offset a little bit. Okay? So, if your RAM's not going in correctly, it's because you got your RAM turned the wrong way. So, do not keep putting pressure on it. If you do, you're going to mess something up. Most motherboard manufacturers are going to tell you that you're going to want to install all of the same brand, speed, size, and chip type of RAM. So, it's usually the best. It's not that you can't get it to work sometimes, but you're gonna usually be better off just sticking to the same type of RAM that you've put in a PC. If you're gonna upgrade later, get the exact same stuff you got before. Just keep that in mind, okay? I've got the manual up for my. I'll pull it over real quick on the stream and show you. Right here. A lot of times this stuff's like riding a bike, but, you know, sometimes things change with motherboards. Sometimes things change with manufacturers. Technology is always evolving, and it's never a bad thing to ensure that you're staying on the correct path, because if you're going to do it right the first time and make sure you're not going to damage anything, right? And especially if you're not an experienced builder, having your instructions out to make sure you're doing things the right way is the best practice possible, okay? So all motherboard manufacturers basically are going to have an online version of this. This is what I'm looking at right now, which is if you're going to only be running one RAM stick, they're going to tell you to put it in the B2 slot. If you're going to be running 2 RAM sticks, which are called DIMMs, put it in the A2 and the B2 slot. Obviously, if you're going to be running 4 RAM sticks, you're going to put it in all 4 slots. I mean, because where else are you going to put it, right? But this is what they tell you to do, And how you're probably saying, well, how do you know which one is which, right? There's two different ways. So if you need to know which one, like if you only had 2 RAM sticks and you wanted to know which one is A2 and B2, it literally has everything printed on the motherboard, almost always. So from the closest slot to the CPU to the furthest away, it goes A1, A2, B1, B2. So basically, we're going to be putting in the 2nd and the 4th slot with our RAM sticks, okay? That's what it's telling us to do. So, recommended memory configuration is going to go with the 2nd RAM slot and the 4th RAM slot if you're only using 2 RAM sticks. You're going to find a lot of people, and this is, you know, they're just going to go, oh, well, if you've got 2 RAM sticks, you just put them in the first 2 RAM slots. That's not necessarily the case. This is one of the reasons that you should pay attention to your motherboard manufacturer's instructions. The other way that you would know which RAM slots are labeled A1, A2, B1, B2 would be by this right here. I'll zoom in a little bit. So every motherboard manual will have a diagram such as this, okay? They're very easy to read. It's basically a schematic of all the inputs on the motherboard and where they're at and what they're used for and what they're labeled as. It's very, very easy, right? Down below it, you can see it, the numbers of every single label, just like you'll find what we're looking for here are 3 and 7. That's weird, but whatever. So 3 points to DDR5 A1 and B1, right? So A1, B1, A2, B2, right? So every motherboard manual is going to have a diagram like this that shows you explicitly where every single input is for every single thing that needs to get plugged into this motherboard for all your components. It's very, very easy. Again, for anybody that's built PCs before at all, it's kind of like riding a bike, but it's never a bad thing to have it open. And especially for people that haven't built before it, this is your friend, man. Just keep it open. Even if it's just on your phone, this is an awesome thing to have available. So again, we're looking for A2, B2. I should have elaborated on what the components are actually for, what they do before I put these in here. So the best way to kind of break this down is like your motherboard's like your nervous system, right? Your CPU is like your brain. It does all the calculations for everything. Your RAM that we're putting in, so your motherboard is like your skeleton, your nervous system. It's where everything attaches to. It's like where all your organs will go, right? So it's the housing for everything. Like if you're gonna make this like a human body, right? And your motherboard is your skeleton and your nervous system. CPU that we put in a little bit ago is your brain that does the calculations for everything. It does all the thinking. Your RAM is what's going to do like basically short-term storage, short-term memory. Think of it like that, okay? Think of RAM as like short-term memory. So things that get pulled in and out of your brain on the daily, all the time, that's what RAM's for. It makes your CPU, it makes it basically easier to locate storage and quicker to locate items that are in storage that you access very frequently. Okay, so think of it basically like that. There's more to it than that, but that's basically the gist of it, okay? Whereas your storage like this, okay, like your actual storage is where all your memories are. Okay, so this is more like what stores the locations. Okay, RAM is where you store the locations of the memories themselves. And this is the part of your brain that actually stores all the memories. And what the RAM does is helps tell your processing part of your brain where to go find the memories it needs. Okay? So that's basically the way that works. So I just lost everybody, right? Can you confirm? And now storage, what I'm talking about is like where you put everything on
emotional damage.
Everything on your PC, correct? Your software, your like all your games, your operating system, your videos, your pictures, all that stuff. That's what storage is. All your memories. Which we haven't put that in yet, but we're going to in just a second. Now for your RAM, so see that? See how those open and close? That's open. Closed, open. So as long as these are open, you can put a RAM stick in. And as it clicks into place, these will close on their own, or they should. Okay? And these are the two slots that we're going to be putting our RAM sticks in. So basically, boom, it just slides in. It will take just a little bit of force, okay? It'll take just a little bit of force. So, but as you push down, again, don't forget, that notch is offset on the slots on the board. So there's only one way that this will go in correctly. Just pay attention. Boom, boom. And our RAM is locked in. One more. You play Night Rain, it's kind of terrible with the balancing in players. Someone was telling us not to be toxic too. I'm like,
mate, I came here to game. If you wanted to be peaceful, I would have played Stardew Valley, yes? Meanwhile, he calls us things, and we ignore it.
What a story. Incredible story. Thank you for sharing. And there's our other RAM stick locked in. So there you go. RAM sticks are in, guys. Solid, solid. Locked in. Again, like I said, these little notches on the sides. Don't forget, pop those out. Doesn't take much pressure. Like this. Boom. Okay? Same thing if you're going to take the RAM stick out. They're locked into place by those little notches on the sides. If you want to take them out, you got to unlock those notches. Okay? But if you're putting a stick in, pull those little side notches out. And when you put the RAM stick in, it will take a little bit of pressure. Not much. A little bit of pressure. Don't forget to make sure you're putting it in the correct way. And as you put pressure in, it will lock itself into place, okay? That's the hard drive we're about to put in. We got us a 990 Pro. So these these little heatsink caps that go on these solid state. So there's 3 of them on this motherboard. There are 3 M.2 drives on this or slots for this motherboard, and they're really, really easy to get on and off. So basically, it's just this little. You just push it down, right? So if this is hooked on, right, there it is. Now you push this in that way. And it comes right off, right? So this is what I was doing. I was installing our primary solid state drive. This is what I'm going to be using for most of our gaming. It's 2 terabyte. I'll be putting my operating system on a different drive. I've got another backup drive that'll go in here, but this will be our primary drive for our games we play. And basically what it is this piece comes off, correct? This piece comes off of right here, and the hard drive goes into the, it slots into the where it connects with its circuits, and then the back end here basically is just like a little switch that locks it into place. This 990 Evo has a heatsink on it, so I don't think it's going to work with this going back on, but I might be able to modify it. We'll see. Figure it out one way or another. I could always just leave this off. It's not a huge deal, because the solid state drive has its own heatsink on top of it, which is a really good heatsink anyways. And honestly, the aesthetics aren't going to be affected, because that's where the graphics card's going to go as well. So you're not really going to see anything. A lot of it will be covered up. I'll see. We'll see what I need to do with that. But for now, I'm just going to leave this off. Whatevs. We'll make it work. We'll figure it out. This first slot here is your blazing M.2. So this is your PCIe 5 slot, which is going to be better for whatever you want to get the best read-write speeds for hard drive. You put here. The other that you don't care as much about will go down here, right? And I want the best for my gaming stuff, which is why I'm putting that hard drive there. Do a heatsink. You guys want to do a heatsink? This will be, can you guys see that? It's reflective, so it's kind of weird. This is going to be our, so fan-cooled, air-cooled heatsink for this build. It is the Peerless Assassin 120 white ARGB. And as I said to people before, I have always been a fan of air cooling. I don't have anything against water cooling, really, especially closed loop water cooling. I think that it can be a phenomenal thing, especially for the right applications. If you're doing significant builds that generate a lot of heat, especially with overclocking and things like that, a full closed loop system can be a great thing for people that do that kind of stuff. But for the general user that's not going to be especially doing any kind of overclocking, I think that this with thermalright is really kind of hitting the spot nowadays. So I've been a big advocate of Noctua for a while, you know, but you're usually going to pay quite the premium for Noctua products, especially something like the Noctua NH-D15, which I run on my current build, right? It is a significant cooler. It has been at the top of the line for air coolers for a very, very long time now, the NH-D15, as well as its variants that they've come out with, various models or you know, offshoot models of the NH-D15. And it's I don't see anything wrong with paying a premium for something that you know is going to work well and last, you know. But as I was doing this build and I was doing research, I came across this thermalright line of coolers, and they are doing an on-par job with Noctua coolers that cost roughly $80 to $100 more, you know. And I think that probably if you're doing any kind of overclocking, you would maybe still want to look into whether or not Noctua would be something you would want to do, but I would probably say if you're doing any kind of overclocking, you might want to look into probably going through a water cooling solution rather than air cooling. Not that you can't do it, but you're probably going to get better, you know, better temperatures out of a water cooling solution, especially a closed loop, full loop water cooling solution, custom loop water cooling solution than air. But, you know, air's made great strides. But Noctua has become very expensive because they're good at what they do. And I think that it's very hard to argue with a company like Thermalright coming out with products like the Peerless Assassin here, you know, that is producing on par temperatures with an NHD15 at $80 to $100 less. As well as they have another one that is very, very nice looking, that is their more modern model called the Phantom Spirit, I think, and they even have an Evo version that looks really good, but they didn't have it in white, unfortunately. So I would highly recommend, if you're doing air cooling solutions, to look into Thermalright and the Peerless Assassin. They have a large number of models. And the Phantom Spirit. I'll be putting a Phantom Spirit in the budget build I'm about to do, and I'll let you know the kinds of, you know, performance I get out of it. But yeah, I do think that they've been out long enough. There's been plenty of benchmarkings, and I mean, major review sites have been looking at these coolers for a long time now, you know, Gamers Nexus, I mean, all kinds of places, and have come to the same conclusion that I'm telling you about right now, which is that they are very, very close to the same kind of temperatures you're going to get from a Noctua. So it's very hard to argue with the price point and performance that you're getting here. So that is why we have gone with the Peerless Assassin. All right. I am considering leaving the front fan off of this heatsink, as I have seen plenty of research saying that the front fan literally does nothing for, you know, temperatures on this heatsink. You can literally get away with the middle fan and it doesn't change anything. So I might do some testing. I don't know. We'll see how much of my RAM would be covered by this front fan, but we'll see. Okay. So again, this is going to be our heatsink. You can see the Thermalright written on the top of it. It's got the white. It's thematically white, right, to go with our build. So basically what happens, and look, let me tell you something. Anytime you buy, let me turn this over. Anytime you buy a heatsink, it comes with a sticker on the bottom of it. And you see that warning? Please peel me off before you use me. That is basically what it says, because if you don't peel this off and you try to put this on your CPU, you're not going to be pulling heat off of your CPU and you're going to ruin your chip, okay? But this is to keep this plate clean, okay? You want to keep this plate clean until you're ready to stick this on. So do not forget to peel that off before you stick it on. You'll be in a world of hurt. You'll be spending money on another CPU very, very soon if you forget to do that. So this is the accessory box that came with our Thermalright Peerless Assassin. As you can see, there are many different things inside of here, and the reason that is because they give you everything you need to fit this to a modern platform. It's not just, oh, I bought this for an AM5, or oh, I bought this for, you know, Intel's 14 series or whatever. You know what I mean? It's they give you basically everything you need that you would possibly need to fit this to a modern platform, regardless of Intel or AMD or whatever. Okay, so that's why it's very, very important to use these. Okay, and also, as you can tell from the front of the instructions, the installation guide from Thermalright, please remove protective sticker before install. They try to tell you all over the place to remove that sticker. Okay, it's very important. But as you can see from inside, okay, they've got a page for AMD AM5 installation. They've got a page for Intel LGA 115X 1200 install. They've got Intel, what is that? I'm looking at my monitor and it's bright. LGA 2011 2066. So they give you about everything you need to install this on any platform, as well as a diagram of everything that should be in the box with it, right? So, very, very simple. If you can follow instructions, you can get this done. Very easy. It's not hard. All right. So, first thing it's telling us to do is to remove these plastic brackets. So we're going to take those out. That usually ends up being the case with most heat sinks nowadays. It is. We have both of the plastic pieces that they asked us to take off on the side of the CPU. Off. Alright. Alright. So, per the instructions, what we're going to do here is exactly as it shows. So, this picture right here is exactly what we're going to be doing if I can get it to focus in there. Okay. So, we got these little standoffs that are going to go down. Then the metal plates will go on top, and then the screws will go on top of that, okay? I know that wasn't a great focus in there, but you'll see exactly what I'm doing. So, it's probably a little bit hard to tell, but you can see it a little bit. The back plate here is it's got a raised part that the screws were actually screwed into with these plastic support pieces in the first place, right? So, with those out and the screws out, it's still got these raised pieces for the screws. So these guys that need to go on here are just going to slide right over those. Real easy. They just slide on. And now, obviously, these guys, you've got to know which way they go on. You just got to look at the diagram. And according to the diagram, they will be curving in with the notch up like so, and then you're just gonna drop these in. There you go. Everything looks flush, looks good. Now the fun begins. And that's thermal paste. Who's ready for some thermal? Who wants to put on the thermal paste? You? You? You want to do it? You want to put on the thermal paste? This is the thermal paste I'll be using. It is the M.2 SSD thermal paste. It's not necessarily that the Thermalright thermal paste. This is the TF7 that came with the Peerless Assassin, as well as the plate here. You know, it's not that that's bad thermal paste necessarily, but this is more top of the line stuff. And I already had this. I've used this tube to an extent already with my 3070 having some temperature issues. I went ahead and took my 3070 apart, about 9 months ago probably, and I replaced the thermal padding and the thermal paste on it with some of this, and I replaced, since I already had my PC torn apart basically, I replaced the thermal paste on my CPU, which is a 5900X as well. So we're going to go ahead and use this. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some 90% isopropyl rubbing alcohol real quick, and I'm going to clean off the top of this processor very, very well. And I will probably, even though this has a sticker on it, I will pull that sticker off and I will clean the bottom of that as well, just to make sure that everything is nice and clean as possible with no oils on it before we put this thermal paste on. 91% isopropyl alcohol. Okay, and look, I'm using Q-tips. There are going to be people that go, don't do that, don't use Q-tips. Bro, I've always used Q-tips to clean these things, and I've never had an issue. I get it, okay? The best thing that you can use to clean something like the top of a processor is going to be a lint-free cloth. So use a lint-free cloth with 91% isopropyl alcohol. I don't have one on hand right now, so sue me, man. This is what I've got, and this is what I'm going to use. I've done it before. It's fine. Look, if you're going to clean electronics, and I always have 90 to 92% isopropyl alcohol on hand, because if I take a controller apart, or if I clean out my keyboard, or if, you know, I have to re-thermal paste something or whatever, this is what you clean it with. Always. Okay? This is the stuff. This is the stuff to clean electronics with. You don't want to drown your electronics in it, you know? But you want to get enough on there to clean it up nice, and you'll see it'll leave streaks, but the streaks will dry real fast, because that's what alcohol does. It evaporates very quickly. That's one of the reasons it's so good for electronics, right? You just kind of wipe down the top of this, all right? Make sure it's nice and clean. And I'll use the other side of the Q-tip as well, just to ensure. You just want to make sure there's no oils on this, because we touched it to put it in. I tried to do my best not to touch the top of it, but you never know, right? But you don't want that thermal paste to have any kind of compounds or oils in it that are going to prevent it from doing its job correctly. All right? So a lot of people will be like, oh, well, this is an unnecessary step. Well, I don't want to do this job again if I don't have to. I don't want to have to take that heatsink off after I put it on and, potentially re-thermal paste everything if it's not necessary. So I'll just take a few minutes here, clean up my chip before I apply my thermal paste. Easy. Err on the side of caution, right? But you do want to make sure that you didn't catch any of that swab on like the side of the chip or anything like that, and it didn't leave any fuzz. You don't want any of this fuzz caught on the chip, in the thermal paste, or anything like that, okay? So that's what I was saying before. The best thing you can use is a lint-free cloth. So just know that's the best practice to have. Now, like I said before, that sticker, take that off, right? Boom. See that mirror? Woo! That's nice. Again, same thing as with the CPU. Just rub that bad boy down real nice. Oh, can you even see what I'm doing here? Just want to make sure it's nice and clean. I know there's a sticker on there. They put the sticker on there to prevent, but it's also a sticky sticker, guys. Alright. Nothing wrong with using a little bit of alcohol and cleaning this bad boy up. Now, there are a lot of different thoughts about the best way to do thermal paste, guys. Some people do an X across the CPU. Some people put it on there and then scrape it across it and put a really thin layer with like a credit card or a, you know, business card or something. The method I've always used and a lot of people use is to just put a nice pea-sized dot right in the middle, kind of like this. And just let the heatsink spread it on itself, okay? Now, the other thing I'll do sometimes is just like put another dot on each end or each corner just to make sure that there's a little bit getting out there. You know what I mean? Get off of there. But that should be plenty. It's about all it takes right there. All right. Shouldn't really need any more than that. And you don't really need to spread it out either, because when the heatsink gets pushed down onto this, the heatsink will spread it out itself. How much thermal paste I put on that? It's not really that much. You don't need that much. That might have actually been a little bit overkill. Well, even if it squeezes a little bit out the sides though, it's not a big deal. So, because our I/O ports for the motherboard are out facing this way, we know that this is the way our motherboard is going to be up in the case, and we want it to go on right like this. All right. Now, what I will tell you about the heat sinks is you kind of want to get them both started. It shouldn't be hard. The heatsink bolts or screws, they have springs on them, guys. Let me make sure I got this one started. Hold on. Yeah. So, just to show you real quick, before I tighten this all the way down, the heatsink itself, those screws, you see that on each side, they have springs underneath. As you're screwing them, they're going to get more tension. But just to get them started, you might have to press down on them a little bit because there is tension because of those springs, right? But it doesn't take very much pressure. The main thing is just looking and making sure that you have them lined up right on top of those plates so that the screws are actually lining up correctly. And you don't want to screw one side down all the way before you screw the other one. You kind of want to screw one side down a few turns, go back, screw the other side down a few turns, okay? And just keep alternating. Because again, you've got that thermal paste on there right now, right? And if you squeeze one side, if you screw one side of this heatsink down all the way first, then it's going to be tilted before you squeeze the other side down. And what's that going to do? It's going to squeeze all that thermal paste out one side. You kind of want to spread it evenly, okay? So you want to tighten this down fairly evenly as you go. I do think I'm going to leave the front fan off of the heatsink for now, okay? So the reason being is that, again, I have, and I'll show you. So I've read reports of, and it looks further probably than it actually is because of the angle, but you can see, if you look straight down, right? If I was to put a fan on the front of this heatsink, it would definitely be covering the RAM, correct? And that's not a bad thing. And it's especially not a bad thing if you need that fan to be dissipating the heat off of your heatsink. But I've read plenty of reports that have told me that having the front fan on this Peerless Assassin doesn't do anything for reducing the heat off of your CPU. So, you know, if I didn't have RGB RAM, I wouldn't worry about it. I would run both of my RGB fans. But since we do have this nice, sexy RGB Corsair Vengeance RAM here, we're going to show it off, and I'm not going to run this front fan as long as I'm not having any CPU temperature issues. And I'm only going to run the middle one for now, okay? So, the next part of this is putting one of those fans on, which are these bad boys that came with it. So, I'll have an extra one, actually, and I'll see what I'm going to end up doing with that. I could put it on the back of the case as an exhaust fan if I wanted to. I don't need an exhaust fan on this case, but if I have an extra fan, why not? We'll see. So really all this should take is putting fan clips on these fans. So the fan is going to go in like this so that the cables will be over on this side of the motherboard, which is going to be the top of, this is the top of the motherboard, okay? So this is the top, this is the back, this is the front, and this is the bottom. This is where the graphics card is going to be, all right? This is where my capture card will be. This is where my other two solid state hard drives will be underneath this, just for reference, all right? But with the cables being right here, they will be able to run right over this, or even in between these gaps or something. And the cable management will be fairly seamless. It won't be able to be seen very easily, and I will be able to run them straight behind the motherboard here probably. For anybody that hasn't done this kind of thing before, these little metal wings, right, these are fan clips. This one looks like it might be a little bent, but we'll see. Basically what this does is it allows the fan to slide in where it needs to be. Good. Clip into the fins right here. Perfect. We got it. We did it. Good job, chat. You guys are great. So now our fan is in, right? That's our fan. We have another one. Again, we have another one that most people will probably run on the front. And this is one of those things when you're building a PC that I think if you're not familiar with building PCs, you have to do a bit of homework for yourself, okay? So getting the right motherboard, getting the motherboard that your CPU will fit in, getting a case that's going to fit the other components you want. So you have to get a case that's big enough to fit your graphics card that you want. You have to get a cooling solution for your processor that is going to fit over your RAM, right? How tall is your RAM going to be? So there's always things like that to take into consideration, and I cannot stress this enough. If you're going to plan to build your own PC, you really, really, really need to do your research on all this kind of stuff. Is the height of your heatsink going to fit inside your case for how wide your case is? And there are plenty of websites that'll show this stuff to you, right? You just have to do the research. It doesn't take very long. There are plenty of websites out there nowadays that will help you do those calculations and tell you whether or not things will work or won't work, you know? But you have to know, first of all, what you even need to research, because there could be a lot of times where people go, oh, well, I just need to buy stuff. And it's like, people end up buying an AMD processor with an Intel motherboard, and then they buy, you know, a little bitty case with because there are different sizes of motherboards too, right? There's full ATX motherboards, there's micro ATX motherboards, and you know, a full ATX motherboard like this one isn't necessarily gonna fit in a small micro ATX case. There are things that you need to know and research and educate yourself on before just willy-nilly buying parts. Certain things have to be compatible and have to fit before you can just start going into a build. Yeah, but it's much more easy today than it was even 10 years ago with all the sites out there and stuff like that. And I tell everybody all the time, if you want to do this kind of thing, then and you have questions, ask myself, ask in Discord. We have all kinds of people around that are always willing to help and dive into this kind of stuff, you know, because we're just tech nerds and we enjoy doing it ourselves, so we're always willing to help other people. But, you know, don't forget that there's plenty of resources here, but you need to be able to, you know, you got to do your own research and figure some of this stuff out, because there's an amount of things that can go wrong if you don't know what you need to know before you start buying things. So at this point, what we're going to do is start prepping our case. So hopefully everybody can hear me okay. The mic is, we'll put it right there. Hopefully that's going to be okay for everybody to hear me all right. So this case is quite chunky, but I'll do my best to show you everything that I'm doing. It is large. This case is very large. This is our fractal torrent case. As you can see, this is the side with the glass window. Okay, that's where we'll be working mostly today with putting in the motherboard. As you can see, it already has on the front side there 2 180 millimeter fans for intake on the bottom, 2 140 millimeter or 3 140 millimeter fans for intake as well. This case is designed to be ready for airflow, okay? The fans, for everything I know, are very, very good quality fans. You shouldn't need to replace any of the fans in this case, and you don't even really need to put any exhaust fans into this case. But we have an extra ARGB thermalright fan that we're not running on the front of our Peerless Assassin, so we might go ahead and just put this on the back of the case anyways, just for aesthetics. We aren't going to get any better thermals necessarily by putting this on, but aesthetically, we've got it. I've got a fan hub to help run everything off the same ARGB signal. so it'll all be functioning off the same lighting signal, and it could be fun just to run it. So why not? I've got it. We'll just do it. On the back here, we have 2 screws. You basically just undo these screws back here, which I already kind of had just hand tight, so easy to take off. So with this case, you take those screws off. This top panel just slides back like this. You'll feel it kind of pop back, and it just lifts off, okay? So this just pops off. Cool. And that's the top housing there, okay? Now, this case, one of the only things that I wasn't really excited about with this case in the first place is that this case houses your power supply in the top. Okay, so your power supply actually sits up here rather than your power supply normally in most modern cases going in the bottom. A lot of old school PCs would house the power supply in the top, but it can tend to make your PC a bit top heavy, which you don't necessarily want, but I don't have a lot of real concerns with that with this case, as this case is very sturdy. It's very it's built very well. It's got a little bit of heft to it anyways. The fact that we've got a nice substantial air cooler in it to offset that weight at the top, as well as a chunky GPU at the bottom, I'm not really worried about it being too top heavy, okay? So I'm okay with it. I do prefer to have a PSU that sits in the bottom of a case to keep the weight distribution more allocated towards the bottom, so you don't get any kind of potential tipping issues, right? But I don't think we're gonna have any issues with this case. So we'll set this aside for right now. So one of the things that I love about really well-built cases is ease of access. Very good engineered cases give you not just great functionality for airflow, they give you great ease of access, and they make it very easy to build inside, route wires, things of that nature, right? So if you notice, there's a little tab right here on the back, and it's just magnetic, and my panel comes off. A lot of other cases will actually have screws that hold these panels on, so you'll have to unscrew each side panel, or even your glass panel on the side will have 4 screws that you've got to undo if you want to get to your components, right? This case isn't like that. This case, literally, you take that top part off that has the 2 screws, and these are magnetic. They clip in. They've got these little clips, which you can see. They're like little knobs. They'll clip in, but it's also got magnetic pieces on them that help keep it secure. It's very, very nice quality of life. You can see the back side of the case has plenty of space for routing wires, right? Routing your cabling. We will be taking another look at this in a little bit after we start putting our components in, but you've got plenty of Velcro straps, correct? Velcro straps for, you've got grommets everywhere, plastic rubber grommets for no matter, obviously our motherboard's gonna be sitting right here, right? But you're gonna have cables running everywhere. They've got slots for like hard drives that you'll have. We've got plenty of accessory packs, right, that came with the case itself. We also will have to install the RGB clear tint. This goes with the case to give the window some RGB vibes, right? So we have to install that as well. But this gives you an idea of if you've ever dealt with a small case or a case that is not built well for cable routing, it can be a nightmare. It can be an absolute nightmare. Cases that are built very well to help the builder route cabling, I cannot stress how nice it is to have a solidly engineered case. So you've got other mounting brackets here for 2.5 inch solid state drives. There's 4 of them. These are for actual, it looks like old school HDDs, right? But you can probably use them for other functions as well. You've got actually what appears to be a small fan hub down here. All kinds of nice stuff inside this case. I'm going to be running my own fan hub controller that I bought. It was really fairly cheap, and it's going to give me more options over what their fan hub has, but this is great for people that don't want to buy their own fan hub, okay? But this gives you an idea of what the case here that I bought for this build gives you quality of life wise over maybe what you've seen before, what you currently have, or even if you're just planning on building a PC, if you've never done it before, this should give you an idea of what a really nice, well-built PC can afford you in your build. It is amazing. If you've ever tried to build in a terribly engineered PC case, it can be absolutely mauling to deal with. Again, this side, just like the other side, and even my current case, which I enjoy my current case I have, and if you want to know what the current build is that we have been running for the past 4 years, all right, so that's the majority of the components, right, that we run, and the current case is the Fractal Design Meshify C case, which I've really enjoyed. It's a good case, but it is not as big as this case is, but it did have a lot of good options. It's a very good case for airflow. It's not as big as this case. I did need to put an amount of fans in there. It didn't come with as quality of fans as this did, but it wasn't as high of a priced case as this was either. So a lot of times you're going to get what you pay for, but as much as I spent on fans to put in that case and things, it probably offset a little bit, right? So I think that's something you need to take into consideration. Again, I built that 4 years ago. I don't know exactly when this case came out, but this is one of the top of the line rated cases for air cooling builds on the market right now. And it was hard to choose anything else, personally. But the Meshify C case, the Fractal, which is also a Fractal case, right? The glass window that case has actually has 4 screws on the front. And if you want to open this panel on that case of our current PC, you have to unscrew all of those to get that panel off. Again, with this one, you just a small amount of pressure and that magnet and those little beads pop off like the other one had, right? Well, if I can get it to focus. See the little knobs right there? They just pop right out and you're open. You can probably see a little bit. It's hard for me to get the camera too close because it's, again, not the optimal setup right now for, I usually am just gaming right here. I'm not trying to show off builds or things of this nature, but I do love doing this, and so I wanted to show all the community and anybody else that might be interested the build and hopefully educate a little bit about what this is. Inside the case, they basically already have standoffs and screw points for the motherboard, okay? So you'll see all that. It's probably difficult to see, but there's like one there, 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 and one there. And back here there's a little window. Now I can show you that the window back here that's open on the back side of the case is obviously where your inputs for the motherboard go. So it's really easy to determine the orientation for your motherboard of how this needs to go in here. It's not difficult. It should be fairly seamless to tell which way your motherboard goes into the PC, right? But again, as somebody who's been doing PC builds for a long time, it probably seems that way to me because I've been dealing with PCs for a very long time. I haven't ever built them as a career or anything, but I've always done it as a hobby for friends and family and for myself and things of that nature. So what I'll show you is I'll pull this up, turn this around a little bit and show you exactly what I'm talking about. See that big window right there? Now again, this is going to be our power supply. This is going to be where all your motherboard inputs pop out at, okay? Don't try to install your motherboard with your PC case upright. It's gonna make things very difficult on you. Keep it simple, man, all right? You wanna get your cables. If you have fans installed already, get your cables out of the way. That way they're not messing you up. Get those cables put away. Make it really nice and easy to get that motherboard set inside of here, all right? We'll pull out our Torrent accessories box. This should have everything we need. Start getting this set up. We also have our manual. Again, for most people that have been doing PC builds for a long time, you probably won't need this very much, if at all. But it's never a bad thing to have it handy because every case can be a little bit different, and you know, directions are good. These things come with an absolute absurd amount of pieces sometimes. You see that bag of stuff? They'll give you an amount of zip ties, which are basically any PC builder's best friend. This is going to be our GPU support arm that comes with these Fractal Torrent cases, and I'll show you where that goes in just a bit. All right, motherboard's going in. Probably need to this here. Slide it in there a little bit. There we go. Perfect. Should feel it kind of just sit right into place. There's going to be one of these stand-up knobs that's not a screw hole, and it'll fit right onto that, and it'll kind of line everything up for you. Again, I don't recommend like really tightening things down until you get all the screws in, just barely hand tight if you haven't done this before. And this is not something you'll need to crank these down anyways. You're just going to want these to really be hand tight anyways. But after getting all of them in, you'll need to go back over them. That's with anything that you tighten down with numerous bolts or screws or whatever. There's no need to torque these down super hard. Make sure they're nice and hand tight. Oh, and we're in. Easy. And again, you can see like up the top, there's some of them can be hard to get to just because they're behind or they're right next to heat sinks or whatever. So having screwdrivers with extensions or even little tools like this can be a great help, you know. Make it easier on yourself. But that's it. So normally the Peerless Assassin, as I said yesterday, you'll have a fan on the front and the middle of it, but I've done a lot of research and basically nobody gets better temps by having a fan on the front and the middle if you're just running a stock CPU and you're not overclocking it or anything. So at least with X3D processors. So I'm not going to worry about running this front fan, and what I'll probably do is maybe just put this as an exhaust fan on the back or something, just for funsies. Okay, so that is the motherboard installed, ready to go. And without the front fan on there, we'll be able to see our nice pretty RGBs. Let's install our power supply. Cool. So again, for anybody wondering, this is a top loaded PSU case. A lot of times more modern cases are going to be a bottom loaded power supply. This is more of an old school styled power supplied case. So a lot of older school computer cases did have the power supply in the top, but it wasn't nearly as functional as this, okay? So one of the reasons I'm not as big on power supplies being in the top is because it can tend to make the case top heavy, but with as big as this case is and as well built as it is, I'm not worried about it being top heavy. The middle of the case has a solid amount of weight in it with the thermalright Peerless Assassin. The bottom of the case will have the 9070 XT, which is got a little bit of heft to it, GPU, and the case itself is very sturdy, right? So I'm not super big on having a PSU in the top of the case, but in this instance, it's not going to bother me very much either. So that's why I went ahead and went with this case, because that was the only thing about it that I was a little bit turned off by. But honestly, with everything else about the case, it was totally worth running for me. So we'll open this bad boy up. So inside the box, it's exactly what you would expect. It's a big power supply and it's a ton of cables. Very exciting. It is for me, at least. So the case comes with screws for the power supply to be installed, and the power supply comes with screws for the power supply to be installed, and they look like the same exact thing, so it doesn't really matter which one you want to use. They're normally going to be the same exact screws. Steel Legend, 850 watt SL850GW, okay, 80 plus gold, 10-year warranty. It's also platinum rated by Cybernetics, A plus rated by Cybernetics. It's got Japanese capacitors. One of the things you'll see quite often with power supplies is, are they Chinese capacitors or are they Japanese capacitors? Japanese capacitors are better capacitors in power supplies than Chinese capacitors, okay? You're always going to have power supplies showcase if they have Japanese capacitors in them go with Japanese capacitors if you can, okay? No matter whether you're installing in the top or the bottom, there are more power supplies coming out nowadays that are giving you different orientations for where your cables come out of. This is the classic case of a power supply. You've got opposite side for turning your power supply on, plugging it in, right? Then where your cables actually come out of to run into your motherboard and to your various power sources, your GPU, things of that nature, right? But there are different ones being made now where they're kind of like side loaders. So you would have, instead of your connectors for all your power for your PC being in the back, they would be on the side, one of the sides, because there are specific cases being made now from companies that work better with applications of, and usually what you'll see is like Lion Lee or Lian Lai, whatever they're called. They have cases that work better, so they've started making these power supplies that have their connectors come out the side and stuff like that. There's a couple other companies that have done it too, but be very careful, because if you have a case like mine or most other traditional cases, if you buy one of those power supplies, it might not work very well in your setup, okay? So be very careful. You can't just necessarily buy one of those types of PSUs, power supply units, and it will function perfectly. Another thing is, you might be able to get it to work, but you really don't want to be putting sharp angle kinks into your power cables if you can keep from it, okay? So the less sharp angle kinks in your power cables, the better. So if I was to have one of those and I'm placing it in here with these cables being on the side, and I'm potentially having to route them down and putting them in at 90-degree angles, it can significantly potentially impact how well the power is being routed through those cables, right? So be very careful. But basically your power supply is just going to come right in here. You line it up. We've got holes in the power supply for the screws. You've got holes in the case for the screws as well. And inside the top of the case here, this case can accommodate, I think, dude, it's something like a 220 millimeter long power supply. It can accommodate a very, very, very deep power supply. But so there's basically little rubber feet, so this thing's not just sitting on metal. The other thing you'll note is power supplies always have a fan. This would normally be considered the top, but this is going in upside down, so it will now be considered the bottom, even though it is actually the top, to keep it cool when it's pumping that electricity for us. Cool. But the rubber feet inside the top of the case here are really nice to give it a nice cushion rather than it just be like sitting on a metal surface or something like that, right? We will set our cabling aside. This comes very, very soon. Boom. Cool. This is obviously your external power cord. It plugs in right here, plugs into your wall. Yeah. And that gives you your power to your PC. I know. Magic. This is a fully modular power supply, meaning that all of the cables can be attached or detached from the power supply. In my opinion, this is the best way to go in modern PC building. You will still find power supplies that are not going to be fully modular. They're going to cost a lot less. So if you're on a budget build, you'll find some that are semi-modular. But you'll find yourself in a position sometimes where you might be building and you'll have some of the built-in cables that you won't need to use. So what you're doing is you're just leaving a bunch of cables tucked into the PC case that don't need to be there, rather than not having to use them, and you can just put them back in the box or whatever, right? So a lot of it comes down to budget. Most modern power supplies are fully modular, and it's a great quality of life, but just for people that don't know, that is the case with power supplies, okay? Again, this is the fun part of PC building. I'm joking if you can't tell. So putting all the components in is really the easy part. This is where the fun OCD part comes in, with actually running all the cabling and trying to hide it and make sure that nobody can see it whenever the PC's on, and the you know, that's what I'll be doing probably all night tonight, is running cabling and trying to make it look really nice and on the back side of the case here. But I'll show you that again in just a moment. In the moment we've all been waiting for, the 9070. Everybody's favorite PC component. I don't think it's mine. I'm more of a processor guy, actually. But most people's favorite component, the graphics card. This is our primary PCIe slot where our graphics card will be getting installed at, okay? So that's where we're looking to put our graphics card. What that means is, for that to slot in appropriately, some of these have to come out. There you go. That's all these are. For those that are not familiar, most people probably know. But all this is basically like removable caging, so that you can add in expansion cards, whatever, to your PC build. Now, for me, I'll also be taking my internal capture card that I have in my current build and be putting it in here whenever I switch my builds out. So I will have my GPU in the top slot, and I'll have my capture card in the bottom PCIe slot. So that's how that will work. All right, we ready? Ready for the opening? This card is very pretty. I like this card. Very thematic, obviously, with a lot of the rest of our build. Nice. See? There's your slots right there. Your inputs, or outputs, I mean. So you've got 3 display ports and an HDMI. Boop. It's the front of our card. It's a pretty nice looking card. Pretty nice. It's the back of it. I haven't run an AMD card in a while, but I'm pretty excited to do it. Pretty excited. It's actually got a little LED on and off ARGB header right here, which is cool. And this is the satisfying part. Oh my god, oh my god, oh Jesus. You guys know you love taking that stuff off. Dude, I still got some to pull off my motherboard. You ready? Oh yeah. Oh my god. You love it. Oh yes. Where's that top one at? Oh yeah. Nice. Do it slow. Oh my god. Oh. Do it slow, OA. Do it slow for me. Taking the plastic film off, boy. I know how you like it, chat. Take that plastic film off nice and slow, boy. I know how you like it. This is a pretty sexy card, dude. Seriously, I like this card. This card is pretty nice. I like this. So you've got a cover on your PCIe slot right here. So there's that little cap that goes on. And again, look, man, especially these components, guys, these components that are stupid expensive, like modern GPUs, hold on to this stuff. You might think like, oh, I should just throw all that away. Hold on to the box, hold on to the styrofoam, the static electric, you know, the what do they call these? The static electricity bag basically prevents any kind of static shock to the component. These kinds of caps, save that stuff. Because in the future, if you decide you want to resell this card, it will sell for more if you have all that stuff. It tells people you take care of your stuff, okay? Make sure these connectors are nice and tight in here before I put this in. This is a nice looking card, man. I'm impressed. Very nice looking card. I like this. So, again, like I showed you just a little bit ago, this is where the PCIe connector, right, for the card. This slots right into the PCIe slot. And this is basically, we took these pieces out. You can see it's the same exact thing. We took two of them out to accommodate the card. And we'll use the same exact screws that were on the case that those came out with to secure it into place. Let me see if I can point this camera down a little bit more and show you what I'm dealing with here. There you go. So, it shouldn't be too difficult. The hardest thing to remember is you've got to get this to go down on the side of the motherboard. These are going to have to come out of this slot right here, and this has to go into the PCIe slot. So you're just having to kind of line all this up at the same time, okay? Actually, if you take like these top connectors out, it makes it a little easier. So just take those out. You can put them back in if you want to keep those inputs clean or whatever for the time being. But there it is. Now it's not fully into the PCIe slot yet. It's just kind of sitting on top of it. So just like the RAM slots have those locking mechanisms on the side of each RAM slot, and you push the RAM in and it locks them in place, and if you want to take the RAM out, you have to unlock and pull the RAM out. The PCIe slots are similar, but they only have one locking mechanism, and it's on the very end of it. So the kind of odd thing about trying to get a GPU out of a PC, especially big cards, is that you need to push on the end of that locking mechanism, and it's underneath these GPUs. So it can be a little bit weird if you've never done it before. And it takes a little bit of pressure to unlock it, yeah? So it can be a little bit awkward, and especially because, like in this case, there is a lot of heat sinks for storage, which could be in the way. I could only basically get to it right here between my my CPU cooler and the GPU itself. So the easiest thing to do is to find something that you can press on it with that you're not going to be worried about hitting. If you can't get to it with a finger, something you can press on it with that won't hurt your motherboard if you slip off of it. Just be careful, okay? But most of the time you're not having to take your GPU out, so it's not a big issue. I'm just trying to explain to you what a PCIe slot looks like, and you know what it takes to put something in and remove something. But at this point, basically, just a little bit of pushing down on the GPU as it is already kind of fallen into that PCIe slot, and it just kind of clips right in. And underneath the GPU, you can tell that the locking mechanism has clipped up. That means it's set in place, and it looks pretty good. Then what you're going to do is, again, these metal pieces that we took out to accommodate where the GPU went in, because now you can see the GPU is in with its own kind of metal backing and its own outputs, right? It will have the same kind of top to it as these did. And basically you take these screws that came out of this in the first place, they went just like that, and you just put them back into the same place of the GPU to secure it into place. So let's put in our... So I've got two different GPU support brackets, okay? I've got one that's just for the case, and I've got another one that is going to be for aesthetic purposes. This is a support arm for the GPU that attaches to the case. It came with the case. It's basically going to install right back here, okay? And this arm will adjust to hit right underneath the GPU and keep it from sagging. I also bought one for the front. This will be our aesthetically pleasing GPU support bracket that will go in the front of the case. It'll go probably somewhere like right here, and it will keep the front of the GPU from sagging, okay? It's actually, this is what it'll look like. It's got a temperature sensor on it too, so it'll monitor the temperature of the case. It'll show the temperature of the case on it and stuff like that. Let's get this installed. So basically that's the arm, right? It's very basic, but I mean, it gets the job done. This is like a little rubber knob on the back side of it has like a screw to tighten it down so you can move it back and forth on this arm wherever you need it to support the GPU at the best possible place, right? Right? So if I tip this backwards, there's like, it attaches right here with screws that come in through the back, and then there's an arm that comes off of it, and there's like, basically this arm can move up and down on this, right? And it's got just like a rubber knob right here where you can set this height, and you can set the rubber knob to go wherever you need out this arm to just support at whatever position you need it to. It's better than nothing, you know what I mean? Again, I mean, I bought another one to accommodate the front of this as well, because these GPUs are just so chunky anymore that you'll get sag everywhere, right? So it's nice aesthetically, the one I bought, as well as keeping this from sagging on either the back end or the front end is going to be optimal. So that'll be nice. That is the major, those are the major components, guys. Honestly, the rest of what I have left for the build is just monotony, really. It's running cables, dude. And to sit here and run cables with you guys is going to be probably not something I care to do. I'm going to just like probably hang out with my family, watch movies, and run cables and stuff. If I was in a legitimate, like, if I had like a PC build setup or a test benching setup or whatever, it would be a little bit nicer and I wouldn't mind streaming that kind of stuff. But this is not, that's not the situation here. I mean, normally I'm like, this is a very confined space. I've done the best I could to like showcase the major parts of the build. This is not an optimal space to do PC building. It just really isn't. And so as much as I would like to show everything as well, it's not a great situation for me to do PC builds in this space. It's just, it's very cramped, it's very uncomfortable, and I would be much more comfortable just doing this somewhere else. So especially the cable routing and stuff, that stuff is kind of monotonous. Where do the hard drives go, or do you just have M.2s? I just have M.2s. Yeah, just M.2s, man. But these right here, you can see, right? See all these screw slots? These would be for your actually 2.5 inch solid states. There's 4 places for those, as well as these would be for your traditional HDDs. So it's got plenty of space for hard drive expansion if you needed it. But the motherboard itself for me has 3 M.2s. So that's what I'm using. I'm using 3 M.2 hard drives in this. You know, as you can tell, you know, this will probably be close to the end of it for me. I'm gonna go hang out with my family while I do some of the routing on this, and you know, I'm not rushing this build or anything. I'm taking my time. I'm kind of enjoying this. I like building PCs, and I don't get to do it very often, so I'm just kind of having a good time with this. And I'm glad I got to share a lot of it with you guys. I'm sorry I'm not going to do a lot of the wire routing, but I'll show everything to you guys after it's all done, obviously. I love doing this stuff, and we have a lot of people in the community too that really enjoy PC building. They, you know, enjoy just technology as a whole, and I'm always willing to help people any way I can. That's really the reason that I did this. I'm not in an optimal situation to be able to showcase a build, obviously, but I wanted to be able to do this for you guys because I know it's interesting to some of you. Some of you have been talking about wanting to get more educated on potentially doing your own builds and stuff, and so if I can help you in any way, you know, by showing you some of what you need to do there, then that's what I want to do. It's so hard with not having like an up-close camera too, to be able to give you a look at what I'm looking at for routing the wires and plugging stuff in and where you're plugging it in. That's one of the hard things to really show you. You know, so I could sit here and be like, oh, I'm plugging this in at the back of the PSU at this location, and you know, it's gonna go down here and it's gonna go in here and it's gonna plug into the motherboard where it's labeled this, but you're not really gonna see it, you know what I mean? Which is one of the reasons it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to stream that, you know, whenever it would be better for me to be in a more comfortable situation to do it. And you know, I'll show you guys the finished product, obviously, but I'm always here to help, and we have plenty of people in the community that are here to help too. Yeah, you're not lying, dude. My calves are flipping burning. I don't work out anymore at all, dude. Besides swimming in the pool, my calves are flipping cooked right now. You know, I just like hanging out with you guys, and I like, you know, I've always done this kind of stuff just because I'm a nerd. I mean, since I was a kid, I've been messing with computers and stuff like that. And I haven't built one in 4 years, so it's been a while, and I'm a little bit rusty, but it's like riding a bike, basically.